I don't even know where to begin. But here I am pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, because I can't keep this bottled up anymore. I'm a 37-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife Emma for 8 years. She's 34, stunningly beautiful, and always the life of the party. People gravitate toward her, and I guess I did too when we first met. But after what happened last night, I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at her the same way again. It started out as a pretty normal evening. Our mutual friend Tyler was hosting a small get-together at his place. Emma loves these kinds of gatherings. Wine flowing, music in the background, and the chance to be the center of attention. I usually go along with it, though I've never been much of a social butterfly. Last night was no different. Emma was radiant, wearing this sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly. I couldn't help but feel proud to have her by my side, though a tiny voice in the back of my head reminded me how often her charm caught the attention of other men. The party started off harmless enough. Small talk, laughter, clinking glasses. I hung back near the kitchen, chatting with a few of the guys about work and football while Emma floated around the room like the social butterfly she is. She seemed particularly animated that night, laughing a little too hard at jokes that weren't funny, and touching arms a little too often still. I brushed it off. That's just Emma, I told myself. She loves people and people love her. But then something shifted. I noticed her talking to a guy I didn't recognize. He was tall, fit, and dressed in a way that screamed confidence. His name was Ryan, and apparently he was a friend of Tyler's from work. I watched as Emma's body language changed, leaning in close, flipping her hair, touching his arm. My stomach twisted, but I didn't want to overreact. Maybe I was just being paranoid. An hour later, the group decided to play some kind of card game that required partners. Emma naturally paired up with Ryan. I was left with a woman I barely knew who kept apologizing for not knowing the rules. I tried to focus on the game, but my eyes kept drifting toward Emma and Ryan. They were laughing, whispering, and exchanging glances that made my chest tighten. I felt like an outsider at my own party. After the game ended, Emma announced that she needed another glass of wine and asked Ryan to join her in the kitchen. My heart sank. I tried to tell myself they were just being friendly, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. I wanted to follow them to interrupt whatever was happening, but I didn't want to make a scene. So I stayed put, pretending to laugh at a joke. Someone told, though. I didn't hear a word of it. When Emma and Ryan returned, something about her demeanor had changed. She looked different. Her cheeks were flushed, her smile a little too wide. Ryan, on the other hand, looked smug, like he knew something. I didn't. I tried to pull Emma aside to ask what was going on, but she brushed me off, saying, "Relax, honey. You're being ridiculous." Then came the moment that shattered my world. It was nearing midnight, and Tyler suggested we all take a group photo. As we gathered in the living room, Emma stood next to Ryan. I moved to stand beside her, but she turned to me with a smirk and said, "Why don't you let Rye stand here just for fun?" Everyone laughed, and I forced to smile, though my insides were churning. After the photo, Emma reached for Ryan's hand in front of all our friends. She held on to him, turned to me, and with that same smirk said, "Don't worry, darling. It's just one night." The room went silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd react. My mind went blank. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but all I could do was stand there, frozen in place, as she and Ryan exchanged a glance that sent chills down my spine. And just like that, Emma let go of his hand, laughed as if nothing had happened, and walked to the other side of the room, leaving me standing there, humiliated. I felt like I was suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me. I couldn't even look at my friends. All I could think about was the betrayal, the humiliation, and the burning question in my mind. Had this been going on all along? I stayed at the party longer than I should have. Not because I wanted to, God, no, but because I was too stunned to move. My legs felt like lead, my throat dry as sandpaper. I stood in the corner watching Emma laugh and mingle as if nothing had happened. Ryan was still there too, though he seemed to have eased up on his flirtations. Maybe he thought he'd already won my friends. They didn't say a word. Some of them exchanged awkward glances while others avoided looking at me altogether. Tyler tried to pull me into a conversation about some sports team, but I couldn't focus. All I could hear was Emma's voice echoing in my head. "Don't worry, darling, it's just one night." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma came up to me and said, "Ready to go?" Her tone was so casual, so unaffected, it made me sick. She didn't even wait for my answer. She grabbed her coat, said a cheerful goodbye to everyone, and walked out the door. I followed her like a lost puppy, my mind too clouded to think straight. The drive home was unbearable. Emma sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The silence between us was deafening, but I couldn't bring myself to break it. I kept replaying the scene in my head, her smirk, her hand in his, the way she dismissed my feelings in front of everyone. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She looked content, like she'd had the time of her life. It made my blood boil. I wanted to say something, to ask her what the hell she was thinking, but every time I opened my mouth, the words got caught in my throat. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, I managed to croak out, "What was that? Back there?" She looked up from her phone, fighting confusion. What you know, what I'm talking about?" I said, my voice shaking, that whatever that was, with Ryan holding his hand, that comment you made. "What the hell, Emma?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, for God's sake, it was a joke. Don't be so dramatic." "A joke," I repeated, incredulous. "You humiliated me in front of all our friends. You held his hand, Emma. You said it was just one night. What am I supposed to think?" She sighed, clearly annoyed. "You're overreacting. Ryan's just a friend." "It was harmless. Harmless," I snapped. "Do you have any idea how it looked? How it made me feel?" Her expression hardened. "You're being ridiculous. I can't even have fun at a party without you getting all jealous and insecure. Grow up, Dave." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jealous and insecure. I wasn't imagining things. I saw the way she looked at him, the way he looked at her. But no matter how hard I tried to explain, that she dismissed me, brushing off my concerns like they were nothing. "I'm going to bed," she said, getting out of the car and slamming the door behind her. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel and staring at the darkened windows of our house. My mind was racing, my chest tight with anger and hurt. How could she act like this? How could she not see what she was doing to me? When I finally went inside, she was already in bed, her back turned to me. I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at her silhouette in the dim light. I wanted to shake her to make her see how much she was hurting me. But instead, I just turned around and went to the couch. I couldn't sleep beside her, not after what had happened. As I lay there in the dark, my mind spiraled into 1,000 worst-case scenarios. Was she cheating on me? Had she been for a while? Was Ryan the only one, or were there others? The thought of it made me feel sick to my stomach. I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking it, that maybe she was telling the truth, but deep down I knew something was wrong. This wasn't just a one-time thing. It couldn't be, the way she'd acted, the way she'd looked at him. It wasn't innocent. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying the night over and over in my head. Every glance, every laugh, every touch. By the time the sun started to rise, I felt like a shell of myself. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this go. Not this time. The morning after the party, I woke up on the couch feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My neck ached, my head pounded, and my heart felt like it had been through a shredder. The night before kept replaying in my mind, a haunting loop of humiliation and doubt. I knew I couldn't keep living in this fog of confusion, but I had no idea where to start. Emma was already up by the time I stumbled into the kitchen. She was sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone like it was just another Sunday morning. She didn't even look up. When I walked in, her indifference hit me like another slap in the face. "Morning," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Morning," she replied without looking up. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her for a moment. I just stared at her, hoping she'd say something, anything that would make me feel like I wasn't losing my mind. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, Emma. I said, my voice firmer. "This time we need to talk about last night." She sighed and put her phone down, finally meeting my eyes. "What now, Dave?" "What now?" I repeated, incredulous. "You humiliated me in front of all our friends. You held another man's hand, made a comment about just one night, and acted like it was no big deal. How do you think that made me feel?" Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the walls going up. "Dave, I told you last night it was a joke. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "I'm not blowing anything out of proportion, Emma. I know what I saw. You were flirting with him all night. You were touching him, laughing at everything he said. You didn't even care that I was right there." She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "Ryan's just a friend. You're being paranoid." "Paranoid," I snapped. "You think I'm paranoid because I don't want my wife holding hands with another man and making comments that make me look like a fool? Do you even care how this is affecting me?" Her expression hardened. "What do you want me to say, Dave? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. There, happy now?" It wasn't even close to what I wanted to hear. Her apology was hollow, a token gesture to get me to drop the subject, but I wasn't ready to drop it. "Not this time, Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I need you to be honest with me. Is there something going on between you and Ryan?" Her eyes widened, and for a split second I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But then she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh my God, Dave, you're unbelievable. You think I'm cheating on you because I made a joke at a party? Do you even hear how crazy you sound?" I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, to accept her words at face value and move on. But another part of me, the part that had been keeping me up all night, knew there was more to the story. The rest of the day was tense. Emma avoided me as much as possible, retreating to the bedroom or the backyard. Whenever I tried to talk to her, I felt like a ghost in my own house, wandering aimlessly while the weight of her words crushed me. Was I really overreacting? Was I reading too much into things? Or was gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own instincts? By evening, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I needed answers, and if Emma wasn't going to give them to me, I'd have to find them myself. So while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. Thankfully, she'd never bothered to change her passcode. I told myself I wasn't looking for anything specific, just clues, something to either confirm my worst fears or put my mind at ease. But what I found made my blood run cold. There were texts from Ryan, not just a few but dozens. They weren't overtly romantic, but there was a familiarity in their tone that made me uneasy. "Ryan last night was fun. Can't wait for the next one. Winking face, Emma. You're such a troublemaker," face with tears of joy. "But yeah, me too. Let's keep this between us, okay? Keep this between us." My stomach churned as I scrolled further back, finding more messages that painted a picture I didn't want to see. Inside jokes, playful banter, and an undeniable chemistry. It wasn't explicit, but it didn't need to be. The undertone was clear. There was something there. When Emma came out of the shower, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, her phone clutched in my hand. She froze when she saw me, her eyes darting to the phone like she knew exactly what I'd found. "Dave," she said slowly, her voice carefully measured. "What are you doing?" I looked up at her, my face pale and my hands trembling. "You tell me, Emma. What am I supposed to think when I see messages like this?" Her expression shifted from shock to anger. "In an instant you went through my phone? Are you serious right now? That's such an invasion of privacy, Dave. Privacy!" I shot back, my voice rising. "You've been texting Ryan behind my back, telling him to keep things between you. How am I supposed to feel about that?" "It's nothing," she yelled, her face red with fury. "Heck, a friend, Dave, just a friend." "I can't believe you'd stoop so low as to invade my privacy over something so stupid." Her deflection only made me angrier. "You think this is stupid? You're hiding things from me, Emma. You're lying to me. How am I supposed to trust you after this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding and my mind racing. I didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear. Our marriage was on the verge of collapse, and I was powerless to stop it. The day after finding those messages, I felt like a man teetering on the edge of a cliff. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and confusion. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Work, errands, even basic conversations. All I could think about were those texts, and the way Emma had turned the blame on me. Instead of addressing the issue, I needed clarity. I needed to know the truth, and there was only one person who could give it to me. That evening, when Emma got home from work, she acted like everything was fine. She kissed me on the cheek, asked what we were having for dinner, and started chatting about her day as if nothing had happened. Her ability to compartmentalize was almost impressive. Almost. But I wasn't in the mood for games. "We need to talk," I said. Cutting her off mid-sentence, she froze for a second, her eyes narrowing. "About what you know," what I said, firmly meeting her gaze. "About Ryan, about the texts, about everything." Her face hardened and she crossed her arms. "Are you seriously still on this? I told you there's nothing going on. You're making something out of nothing, Dave. Stop." I said, my voice sharper than I intended, "Stop rushing this off like it's no big deal. I saw the messages, Emma. I saw how you told him to keep this between us. You've been hiding things from me, and I need to know why." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she was going to snap back with another dismissive remark, but instead she sighed and looked away, her shoulders slumping. "Dave, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd overreact." "Overreact?" I repeated, my voice ing. "Do you even hear yourself right now? You've been flirting with another man, hiding it from me, and somehow I'm the one in the wrong." "It wasn't flirting," she shouted, finally losing her composure. "It was just harmless fun. Ryan and I were just joking around. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything," I shot back. "Do you think I'm stupid, Emma? Do you think I can't tell when there's more to a relationship than you're letting on? Because those messages, sure as hell, didn't look like nothing." She didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked toward the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her. I stood there for a moment, my fists clenched at my sides, trying to process what had just happened. This wasn't just about Ryan anymore. This was about trust. About the cracks in our marriage that had been growing for years but were now impossible to ignore. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I stayed up on the couch, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Was it just Ryan, or were there others? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? The next morning, Emma acted like nothing had happened. She came out of the bedroom dressed for work, her makeup flawless and her smile as bright as ever. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided meeting my eyes. "I'm heading out," she said, grabbing her purse. "Don't wait up for me tonight, I've got a work dinner." I didn't respond. I just watched as she walked out the door, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The moment she was gone, I grabbed my phone and started making calls. First, I called Tyler. He was the one who'd introduced us to Ryan, and I needed to know more about him, who he was, how they knew each other, and whether he noticed anything suspicious. "Hey, man," I said when he picked up. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Tyler replied, sounding a little surprised. "What's up?" "It's about Ryan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How well do you know him?" There was a pause. Pretty well, I guess. We've worked together. For a couple of years." Why I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I just noticed Emma talking to him a lot at the party. They seemed pretty close. Tyler let out a low whistle. "Yeah, I noticed that too." I didn't want to say anything, but, well, let's just say Ryan has a bit of a reputation. "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "He's, known for being a flirt," Tyler said carefully, "especially with married women. He's gotten a couple of people in trouble at work because of it." I thought you knew. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't look. I'm not saying anything's going on," Tyler added quickly. "But yeah, just keep an eye on him. Okay?" "Yeah," I said, my voice hollow. "Thanks, Tyler." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time staring at the phone in my hand. Tyler's words had confirmed my worst fears. Ryan wasn't just some harmless coworker. He was a predator. And Emma, well, she wasn't exactly fighting him off that night. When Emma got home, I was waiting for her. She looked surprised to see me sitting in the living room, the lights dim and a drink in my hand. "What's this?" she asked, setting down her purse. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. She sighed again. "Dave, I'm tired. Can't this wait?" "No," I said, standing up. "It can't." She stared at me for a moment, then crossed her arms. "Fine. What is it?" "I talked to Tyler," I said, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes flickered and she shifted uncomfortably. "He told me about Ryan, about his reputation." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "Don't lie to me, Emma. Not again." Her face went pale, and for the first time I saw a crack in her armor. "Dave, just tell me the truth," I said, my voice breaking. "I deserve that much." She looked down, her shoulders slumping, and then finally she spoke. Emma hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as though searching for an escape. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her blouse, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. For a moment I thought she might actually tell me the truth, and my heart clenched in anticipation. "Dave," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "you're blowing this way out of proportion. Ryan is just someone I've been talking to. It's nothing serious." I stared at her, my jaw tightening. "Talking to Emma, you told him to keep this between you. That doesn't sound like just talking." She sighed, her shoulders slumping as though the weight of the conversation was too much for her. "Fine," she said, her voice sharper. "Now I like the attention, okay? I like feeling noticed. Is that what you want to hear?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Noticed," I repeated. "Emma, I'm your husband. If you needed attention, why not come to me? Why him?" She avoided my gaze, her silence answering the question for her. My chest felt tight, the air in the room suddenly too thin. "Emma," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Have you been with him?" Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with indignation. "What? No, Dave, I would never." She stopped herself, her face flushing. "I mean, it hasn't gone that far." "Hasn't gone that far," I echoed, my voice trembling. "What does that even mean?" She threw her hands up in frustration. "It means what it means. Dave, we've talked, we've flirted, but that's it. Nothing physical. God, you act like I'm some kind of monster." I wanted to believe her, but the cracks in her story were glaring. "So you expect me to believe that all this sneaking around, all these messages were just harmless flirting?" "Yes." She snapped, her eyes blazing with anger. "You're making this into something. It's not." I stood there staring at her, my mind spinning. I wanted to scream to demand more answers, but I could see that I wasn't going to get the truth. Not tonight, at least. She was too defensive, too eager to shift the blame onto me. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my jacket and heading for the door. "Dave, don't do this," she called after me, but I didn't stop. I needed space, needed to think. My head was pounding, my chest aching with the weight of her words. I ended up at a nearby park, sitting on a bench under the faint glow of a street lamp. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was too busy replaying our conversation, analyzing every word, every expression. Was she telling the truth? Had it really just been harmless flirting? Or was she lying to protect herself? And if she was lying, how far had it really gone? I thought about our marriage, about the years we'd spent together, the life we'd built. I thought about the woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman who had once been my everything. And I wondered, was that woman still there? Or had I lost her to someone else? I didn't have the answers. All I had were doubts, fears, and a growing sense of dread that the worst was yet to come. The next few days passed in a haze. Emma and I barely spoke to each other, the tension in the house thick enough to choke on. She went about her routines like nothing had happened, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She avoided eye contact, kept conversation short, and spent an unusual amount of time on her phone. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Her partial confession had done nothing to ease my suspicions. In fact, it had only made them worse. If she could admit to flirting, what else was she hiding? And what did she mean by it? Hasn't gone that far. How far had it gone? One night, as Emma sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, and if she wasn't going to give them to me willingly, I'd have to find them myself. "Emma," I said, breaking the silence. "Can we talk?" She sighed, not even looking up. "Dave, we've talked about this. What more do you want me to say?" "I want the truth," I said, my voice firmer than before. "All of it, not just the parts you think I can handle." She finally looked at me, her eyes flashing with irritation. "I've told you the truth, Dave. I don't know what else you want from me. I want you to explain why you've been sneaking around, texting Ryan and lying to me," I said, my voice rising. "I want to know why you think it's okay to humiliate me in front of our friends and then act like I'm the problem." Her face hardened. "I told you nothing happened. Ryan and I are just friends. If you can't handle that, then maybe you need to take a good look at yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was twisting everything, making me out to be the bad guy. "This isn't about me, Emma. This is about you and your choices." She stood up, her face red with anger. "You know what, Dave? I'm done with this conversation. You clearly don't trust me, and I'm not going to keep defending myself." And with that, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat there in stunned silence, my hands trembling with frustration. I couldn't keep doing this, living in this limbo, drowning in doubts and unanswered questions. The next morning, Emma was already gone. When I woke up, a part of me was relieved not to have to face her, but another part of me felt the growing chasm between us. It was like we were living in two separate worlds and I didn't know how to bridge the gap. Later that day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. If Emma wasn't going to give me the truth, maybe Ryan would. It was a long shot, but I couldn't just sit around doing nothing. I needed to know, even if the answer destroyed me. I found his contact info in Emma's phone. It was easy enough to remember from the text I'd seen, and after pacing around the house for what felt like hours, I finally worked up the courage to call him. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Hello? His voice was casual, almost cheerful, and it made my stomach turn. Ryan? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is Dave, Emma's husband. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Oh, hey, Dave. What's up? I think you know what's up, I said, my tone sharpening. I need to know what's going on between you and my wife. His laugh was short and nervous. Look, man, I don't know what she's told you, but it's nothing. We're just friends. Just friends. I repeated, my grip tightening on the phone, because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look that way, Dave. I swear it's nothing. He said quickly, yeah, we've texted and maybe I flirted a little, but it didn't mean anything. She's not into me like that. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. You sounded too rehearsed, too eager to deflect. Not into you, I said. Then why did she tell you to keep this between you? He hesitated, and I could hear him scrambling for answer. I don't know. Man, maybe she didn't want to upset you. I swear nothing happened. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But there was something about the way he said it. Something that didn't sit right. You're lying, I said, my voice trembling with anger. And if you think I'm going to let this slide, you're dead wrong. Look, I don't want any trouble, he said, his tone shifting to defensive. I'm not the bad guy here. Then tell me the truth. I demanded all of it, or I swear I'll find another way to get it. There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought he might finally crack. But instead he just sighed and said, You're wasting your time, Dave. There's nothing to tell. And with that he hung up. Ryan's dismissal left me fuming. He wasn't going to crack, and Emma wasn't giving me anything either. The weight of not knowing the full truth was eating me alive, and I couldn't keep living like this. My mind was a storm of scenarios, each one worse than the last. Was it an affair? Emotional, physical? Or was I losing my grip on reality? When Emma came home that evening, she seemed surprised to see me sitting in the living room waiting for her. You're home early, she said casually, setting her purse on the counter. We need to talk, I said, standing up. My voice was calm, but inside I was anything. But she groaned clearly and annoyed again. Dave, I don't know how many times I have to tell you. Cut the ACT. Emma? I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. I called Ryan, today. Her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks. You? What? I called him. I repeated. I wanted to hear his side of the story, and do you know what he said? He said you weren't into him like that. But the way he said it, Emma, he's lying. And I think you were too. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't decide what to say. Finally, she crossed her arms and said you had no right to call him. That's an invasion of my privacy. Privacy. I shot back, incredulous. You're hiding things from me, lying to me, and you want to talk about privacy? How about the respect and trust you're supposed to have for your husband? Her face hardened. I've already told you the truth, Dave. If you can't handle it, that's your problem. Do you think I'm stupid, Emma? I said, my voice rising. Do you think I can't tell when someone is lying to me? Because I can. And right now, I don't believe a word you're saying. She threw her hands up in frustration. Fine, believe whatever you want. I'm done trying to convince you. And just like that, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood there shaking with anger and frustration. This wasn't just about the texts or the flirting anymore. This was about trust, or the lack of it. And at that moment, I realized something. If she wasn't going to come clean, I'd have to find the truth myself. Later that night, when Emma was asleep, I grabbed her phone again. I knew it was wrong. I hated myself for stooping to this level, but I couldn't stop. I needed answers. This time I dug deeper, scrolling through her messages, photos, emails, anything that might give me a clue. And then I found it. A series of deleted messages recovered from a cloud backup. Messages between her and Ryan. And they weren't just playful or flirty. They were explicit plans to meet up, promises to keep it between us, and descriptions of moments that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just emotional. It was physical. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt sick, like the floor had been ripped out from under me. This wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was real. She betrayed me, and there was no going back. The moment I saw those messages, the world as I knew it crumbled. Every doubt, every gut feeling, every sleepless night was suddenly justified. The words on the screen confirmed my worst fears. It wasn't just harmless flirting. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. Emma had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way. I sat there for what felt like hours staring at the screen, my mind racing. Anger, sadness, humiliation. It all came crashing down at once. I wanted to confront her right then and there to wake her up and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe it was the tiny shred of dignity I still had left. Instead, I forwarded the messages to my email and put her phone back on the nightstand. Then I grabbed my car keys and left the house. I couldn't be there, not with her sleeping peacefully in the next room, while my world was falling apart. I ended up driving aimlessly for hours, the glow of the city lights blurring through my tears. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind, searching for signs I'd missed. Had I been blind, stupid? Or had she always been this good at hiding who she really was? I parked in an empty lot and stared out at the dark horizon, my chest heaving with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hit something, but all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by the weight of it all. Eventually, I realized I couldn't avoid it forever. I had to face her. I had to confront her with the truth I now held in my hands. So I drove back home, steeling myself for the inevitable explosion. When I walked through the door, the house was silent. Emma was still asleep, completely unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. I stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at the closed bedroom door, trying to summon the courage to go inside. Finally, I pushed it open. She was curled up under the blankets, her face peaceful in the dim light. For a split second, I felt a pang of sadness. This was the woman I'd loved for years, the woman I'd built my life with. And now, here, we were strangers. On the brink of collapse, Emma, I said, my voice low but firm. She stirred, blinking up at me with sleepy confusion. Dave, what are you doing? It's the middle of the night. We need to talk, I said, stepping into the room. My tone must have tipped her off because her expression shifted from confusion to unease. Now she asked, sitting up, can't it wait until morning? No, I said, my voice sharper. Now it can't. Her eyes narrowed. What's this about? I pulled out my phone and opened the messages I'd forwarded to myself. I handed it to her without a word, my hand shaking as I did. She took the phone, her eyes scanning the screen. Her face went pale, her jaw tightening as she read the messages. When she looked up at me, there was no denying the guilt in her eyes. "Where did you get this?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "Don't turn this around on me. I want the truth, Emma, all of it, right now." She looked away, her hands trembling as she set the phone down. "Davy, I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for what to happen?" I asked, my voice rising. "How long has this been going on, Emma? How many times?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't in the mood for sympathy. "It started a few months ago," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It was just supposed to be fun. Nothing serious." "Nothing serious," I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "You call, sneaking around behind my back, lying to me and humiliating me in front of our friends. Nothing serious." She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. I was done holding back. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me, to us? How could you do this, Emma? How could you throw everything away for him?" "I don't know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, Dave. I didn't think it would go this far." Her words were like a knife to the heart. "You didn't think it would go this far," I said, my voice breaking. "Emma, you've destroyed us. You've destroyed me. And for what? For some fling with a guy who doesn't care about you?" She didn't respond. She just sat there crying silently. As I stood over her, my fists clenched at my sides for a moment. I thought about leaving, about walking out the door and never looking back. But something inside me stopped me. I wasn't ready to let her off the hook that easily. "We're not done," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Not by a long shot. You're going to tell me everything, Emma, every single detail. And then we'll see where we go from here." Emma wiped at her tears, her hands trembling as she sat on the edge of the bed. She looked smaller than usual, fragile even, but I wasn't in the mood for sympathy, not after everything. I stood over her, my arms crossed, waiting to start talking. I said coldly, "No more lies, no more excuses. I want every detail." She hesitated, her fingers gripping the bedsheet so tightly, her knuckles turned white. "Dave, I don't want to hurt you more than I already have." I let out a bitter laugh. That ship sailed a long time ago. Now talk. She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It started a few months ago. At first it was just harmless flirting. You know how Ryan is. He's charming, confident, fun. I clenched my jaw. "So I wasn't enough fun for you." She flinched but continued. "It wasn't like that, at least not at first. We talk at work, grab a drink after hours with friends. I didn't think anything of it until you did, Emma. Swallowed hard one night after a work event. We stayed out later than we should have. We had a few drinks and, I don't know, it just happened." I stepped back, running a hand down my face. I felt sick. Define it. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. We kissed. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, and then her lip trembled. And then, a few weeks later, we met up again and I slept with him. Everything inside me went still, even though I had expected it. Hearing her say it out loud sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I turned away from her, staring at the bedroom wall, trying to control the rage building inside me. How many times my voice was eerily calm. She hesitated again, and that told me everything I needed to know. Emma, 4. My head snapped toward her 4 times. I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. You betrayed me 4 times and you were still coming home to me, sleeping in our bed. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care, not anymore. It wasn't serious, Dave, she pleaded. I swear I didn't. You didn't what, Emma? I snapped. Didn't think I'd find out. Didn't think it was wrong. She shook her head violently. I didn't think I'd lose you. I let out another bitter laugh. Lose me, Emma. You lost me the moment you let another man touch you. For a long moment the room was silent, except for her quiet sobs. My hands trembled at my sides, my mind racing through 1,000 emotions at once. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation. Finally, I turned toward the door. I need to get out of here, Dave. Wait. But I was already walking away. I drove without a destination, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly I thought it might snap. My entire world had just been turned upside down. I had given this woman years of my life. I had loved her, trusted her, and she had thrown it all away. For what? A few nights with a man who didn't care about her. The way I did, I ended up at a motel on the edge of town. I couldn't go home. Not yet the thought of sleeping under the same roof as Emma made my skin crawl. I checked into a cheap room, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed. Emma. Of course, Emma. Please, Dave, just come home, let's talk. Emma, I know I messed up. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Emma, I love you. I almost laughed. Love. If she had loved me, she wouldn't have done this in the first place. Then another text came in. Tyler. Hey man, I heard what happened. If you need anything, let me know. I sighed. Word was already spreading. Of course it was our friends had seen the way Emma acted at the party. I should have seen it sooner. Then a Finn text came through. Ryan, guess you finally found out. Good luck. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. No remorse, no guilt, just smug arrogance. And at that moment I knew there was no saving this marriage, no fixing what she had done. I had spent too much time doubting myself, too much energy trying to justify her actions. I wasn't going to be the fool she kept in the dark anymore. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer, and by the end of the week I'd be free.